Good morning, everybody. I'm starting to see some more faces, and thank you for that. It's uh, it's really nice when you can see the faces of people that are participating in class. So I appreciate that, and I know Scott appreciates it as well. So last week we did the market value session, and we had a great attendance. Yes, no, we'll get your stickers in a second. We had a great attendance for the session, and I had mentioned that we were going to have a certified appraiser this week. So we got an opportunity last week to see how we do the market value from our side. And it doesn't differ that much from how Scott is going to share the steps. But of course, there's a very big difference in the amount of time that an appraiser has to put in. I talked about us doing a market evaluation taking about an hour or an hour and a half. And a certified appraiser spends somewhere between 4 to 5 hours just to do one property. So that is certainly information that you want to be able to share with your homeowners, and Scott's going to take you through from his side of the market evaluation. And we're so happy to have Scott Loyer Jr. with us today. Scott is the owner of Connect Appraisal. He shared with me yesterday how he has expanded his business, and we're certainly happy for that. And we are really happy, Scott, in this crazy busy time, that you are taking the time out to be with us today and to share all your information. I sent an email out last night with some handouts. If you don't have the handouts, don't freak out. They're probably in your email. You can take notes as Scott goes along. If you do have them, that's awesome. Take your notes. Scott will take questions into the chat box. And Scott, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Deb, for that wonderful introduction. So, like I said, obviously my name, Scott Loyer, own Connect Appraisal. Just a little further background on myself. I've been appraising for 13 years. I come from a family of appraisals. Both my mother and father are both appraisers as well. When I was learning how to drive my road test, I was actually driving comparable cell photos from my dad in the car. My first driving experience was actually him putting me in the car and telling me to drive to the Bronx at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to an appointment. So I don't want to say it's in my blood, but it's pretty much something I've been growing up with and doing my whole life. So I'm also I also have an SRA designation, which is it's a designation for appraisers. Only 1% of the appraisers in the country have this designation. It takes 2 to 4 years to get. It's recognized by all the courts in the United States. So it's just I've been putting my heart and soul into this profession. So hopefully I can impart some knowledge onto you guys and make sure that your processes for your clients are nice and smooth. So like I said, our mission today is we definitely want to get you confident in guiding your clients through the appraisal process. A lot of the information today you may be familiar with if you're taking my previous classes. However, you're not going to be able to find a lot of this information just by Google searching. You're going to have to hear it firsthand from someone who's actually in the day-to-day grind of the appraisal business. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to take a look at how appraisers view the valuation of property in terms of bank loans, and also focusing on the FHA appraisal process at the end. And to make sure that we get all the ideas together and coalesced, I'm going to do a case study together. So at any time, you guys, like Deb said, want to ask a question or you want me to stop, just post in the chat. Jane will wave her hand and we'll stop. I'll answer the question. I encourage questions. I love questions. I think we learn a lot more when we interact with each other and get those items asked. So I like to just start with, typical presentation format. No, unfortunately, Danielle, it's probably not for credit. I'm not. I'll have to work on the accreditation for for the class, so that would be nice. So I like to, in presentation format, I like to get the definitions out of the way. So, you know, what is exactly an appraisal? Well, for our purposes, an appraisal is an opinion of market value for mortgage lending. Very simple. There's many different other appraisal types, appraisal products, but the one you're going to be most familiar with is something for banking, for bank loans. So I always people like to think appraisals are an exact science. There is a science part to it, but there's also a degree of art. You know, you have to, the art of picking comparable sales is definitely, as you probably guys have experienced, and you could argue against other appraisers that, you know, you didn't like their comps. So, and that's the degree of art there. So you could also have two properties, same property, two appraisers, and they come up with two different values. One comes in at, you know, 600, one comes in at 550. And you're like, how is this possible? Well, there's the art of the process. So I just want to reiterate and stress, it's an opinion of market value. Okay, it's supposed to be an expert opinion, some of us more experts than others, but still an opinion of market value. So after, you know, that definition, I like to point out that the intended use of the appraisal is important. So you're going to be experiencing two different uses of appraisals. So the first one is for conventional loans. This is your standard appraisal that everybody, you know, that gets conventional financing. They get an appraisal. It's to determine market value of the subject, and the bank will use it as collateral for the loan. Very simple. Now, the other use is an FHA loan. Most people think that an FHA loan is only to determine the value for collateral. However, it is also there to determine the eligibility for FHA insurance, which is the Federal Housing Administration. So the reason why I say this is important is because when the client or the AMC of the bank, they order the appraisal, they need to determine if they're going to order a conventional appraisal or an FHA appraisal. Now, that's important because if you order a conventional appraisal and then later on in the process, you try to change it to an FHA appraisal, the borrower will have to get a whole new appraisal and will have to pay again for a new appraisal because you cannot convert from a conventional to an FHA. However, if you do order an FHA appraisal and the borrower says, hey, I don't want to pay, you know, the FHA market, the premium price or whatnot, then they can convert it from an FHA to a conventional without the appraiser having to go back out to the property. And that's why that's important. Jane, what's up?
Sue asks, how many FHA certified appraisers are on Long Island?
I have no idea.
I'm just curious. Maybe she thinks they're hard to find.
No, I know there's.
You know what? Can I jump in? I had an appraiser one time, an FHA appraiser one time, said there's only like a handful on Long Island, and that sometimes that'll affect how long it takes to get an appraiser out to the house.
Really?
Well, yeah. that is true. There are a lot of appraisers that don't do FHA. However, in the residential world, I'm just taking a guess, this is speculation, I would guess at least 70% of the residential appraisers are FHA certified. The tough appraisal or the long lead time for an appraisal is the VA appraisers, because there's a specific list for VA appraisers. I'll put it this way. I've been on the wait list since 2009, and I am still 2 pages away. I think I'm still 150 appraisers away from actually getting on the list. So I have to wait for 150 appraisers to either retire or die before I can start doing VA appraisals.
Really?
And I've been sitting on that list for almost 10 years, more than 10 years now. So,
and sorry, Scott, Daniel asks, why would the appraisal change from conventional to FHA?
So a lot of times, if you have a borrower that has a conventional loan, and let's just say they find out that that down payment that they were given someone gave a gift to them that they thought they had a down payment for, wasn't it wasn't properly given to them. So if the gift wasn't properly given to them, then that means their down payment's going to be reduced. And, you know, a conventional loan at 10%, they might not be able to afford anymore. Now they only can afford the FHA 3.5%. So that's why they would change to FHA. So.
Thank you.
Perfect. So That's the intended use of that. And I like to always stress this, the appraisal is not the final word of value on the property, especially in this market. This is an increasing market. You guys have probably, if you sold or bought anything in this market in the past 6 months, you've probably experienced a lowball appraisal. I don't want to say lowball, but a low appraisal. And that's because we're about 3 months behind in data. And what we need to do as appraisers is we need to use your guys' expertise on the ground of what's happening. So when I'm in certain towns or neighborhoods, I'll talk to the realtors in that neighborhood and say, hey, what's going on in terms of, your listings? Are you getting bidding wars? Or is it going, through the roof? In certain markets, yeah, there are bidding wars going on left and right. But then in other markets, it's been quiet. So, and it's been very strange, but it's mostly done by price range. What's hot and what's not. So I always like to tell people, like, even if I come in low on the appraisal, just remember I'm not telling you that's what the value is. I'm telling you that's the value today. However, that might not be the value of what a buyer will be willing to pay. So if your buyer's got cash and they got extra money, or they got a family friend or something that can give them extra money to purchase that house, if they're willing to do that and buy it for $30,000 more, then guess what? That's the value of the house. It's not what I say it is, it's what the buyer is going to pay for it. So that's something that you have to realize, is that it's in negotiation. I'm not the final word. So remember, my client is the bank. It's not the borrower. It's not the realtor. It's not anybody except the bank. My job is to protect the bank's interest in this. Correct, Sue. Perceived value is not going to satisfy the bank, but an extra $30,000 in cash will satisfy the bank. They don't care if you overpay. They just want to make sure that you have the money. You're taking on the risk. So, all right. So just a quick history lesson of where we are in the appraisal world and how we got here. After the crash of 2008, Dodd-Frank law was implemented, which changed the business model of many appraisers. Basically, before 2008, the banks could engage with appraisers directly. And then after 2008, Dodd-Frank, there was a rule that was implemented that the banks needed to use a third party, or I should say, it was encouraged to use a third party, because they actually don't have to use a third party. You can actually still directly engage with appraisers as long as you have everything transparent. But most banks went to the AMC model. And when that happened, the fees of the appraisals didn't go up. All the AMCs did was take a third of all the appraisers' fees. So at that point, we went from 20,000 appraisers in 2010, and we are down now to almost 70,000 appraisers since that time. And if you've noticed, the appraisal lead times are almost 2 to 4 weeks now. The turn times, things have been very slow. And that's because of what happened in 2008. A lot of people left the industry. The median age of an appraiser is 67. That there's not many people that are coming into the industry, because it takes 2 years to get your license under an apprenticeship, and you really don't get paid that much. And so all of these factors have led to a sharp decrease in the amount of appraisers in the industry. I am probably one of the youngest appraisers that you'll ever come across for right now. But I'm starting to bring myself and my company, I'm starting to train new people to come in. We already have 2 new people that are coming on that are becoming appraisers. So hopefully in the future, we'll be able to fill those ranks again. So.
A question, sorry, Scott. Bob asked, so when the buyer overpays, does the appraised value increase going forward for the next appraisal?
Sue, you had the right answer there. You set the market for the next appraisals. So I had someone that I know.
Sorry, someone's got their, please mute. We've got some music, thank you.
I had someone who bought a house, and it was Plainview. Let's mute audio. There we go. It was in Plainview, and I'm sorry, Plain Edge schools. Bought the house for over $20,000 more. He paid something like $550. This was back in 2017, 2018. Paid $550. The houses at the time were only going for like $510. He came up with an extra $40,000 in cash. he wanted that house because he said, if I set the market here, then watch. He said, he looked at me and he said, I'm going to set the price here. And from that point on, when he bought that sale, houses have now gone from like 550 up to like 750 in that area. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, how is, what? The neighbors are thrilled. Yeah. And it's all because of the demand that you're creating. If you have people that are willing to come into your neighborhood to pay extra money cash for that house, why wouldn't that be the new value? You know, that means there's people coming into that area saying, yes, I want this place so bad that I'm willing to pay more than what the appraised value is. So keep that in mind of why the appraisal is not the final opinion of value. The buyer paying is the final opinion, as long as they have the cash to cough it up. So let's see. So back to the history lesson. So they cut their income third overnight, and you know, the appraisal industry was basically cut in half in terms of the amount of appraisers left. So that is where we. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Daniel asks, would that work the same way in a down market, so that if there's a lower comp that comes in, it will be used in the next appraisal?
So yes, that would work in a down market, but what happens in a down market is what we call market lag. And this happened in 2009, 2010. So when all the prices were crashing, you had some areas that were crashing by 20% over 6 months, 6 to 12 months in that area. However, since no one was selling and no one would sell at certain places, no one was selling, we had no comps. So we had nothing to pull. All we had was the stuff from 2000, early 2008, late 2007. And so when you're pulling the comps, the banks are saying, well, why are the values 20% higher? And we'd be like, well, there's no one selling right now. No one, or I should say, no one's buying right now with the amount of inventories out there. So because that was happening, no new sales were created, leading to an inflated price lag of values going this way. So it's very strange when it goes the other way, because appraisers are very reluctant to say the market's declining unless we have serious facts behind that and backing that. Because to say a market's declining is basically telling them, the bank, that we don't think the price today is going to be the price in 6 months, which means the bank is going to look at that as a high risk loan, and they're going to say, well, if you don't think it's going to be high, it's going to be the same price 6 months from now, then we can't loan as much. So that's why to make that charge, it has to be very fact-based and market-based. So who's the appraiser? I like to always just give general personality traits of an appraiser. Most of them are analytical thinkers. They like to work with numbers. They like to do, math. They like to look at comps in a very analytical light. The appraiser, I apologize, I just spilled my water on my on my mouse. Give me a second here. I don't want my mouse to not work. That would be bad. Give me a second. There we go. Okay. They're analytical thinkers. So they, we like, when we go into a house, we're not going to be swayed emotionally. You can emotionally sway your buyers, oh, look at the little, soffits, and oh, the in-ground pool has the patio. We don't care. We're writing it down. We're reporting it to the bank. I have the ability, or I should say, I've had the opportunity to appraise $30 million homes, and I've had the opportunity to appraise, $150,000 homes. So I've been across the spectrum. At this point, nothing really impresses me anymore, unless you dig out a full basement for a full-size basketball court. That impressed me. Someone literally dug a whole basement out, 20-foot ceilings, and a full-size basketball court. That was like, okay, that's a lot of work that you did. You spent $1 million on a basketball court that you're probably not going to use. But it's there's not much that can impress me right now anymore. So the number two is we're risk adverse. Because of 2008, a lot of appraisers were blamed for the downfall, which I still don't understand, but we know it was the banks basically forcing us. Anyway, we're become more risk adverse. in terms of our appraisal analyses. However, right now, I feel like appraisers are starting to get a little looser these days because prices are increasing so quickly. So I don't know. Number three, we're definitely stubborn. I would like to think I was the least stubborn among my peer group. And I've met other appraisers who are very stubborn, where they won't even talk to realtors if they try to suggest a monthly comp. Some appraisers don't even want comps given to them. They feel like it's an insult to them. I don't know why, but it's if you ever try to fight an appraisal, you're going to probably win 1 out of 10 times because they're very stubborn in their valuation. Number four, they're principled, or I should say most appraisers are principled. We really do try to follow, certain guys, especially after 08. We try to follow a lot of the USPAP principles and make sure that we're always on top of our game and crossing our I's or crossing our T's and dotting our I's. See, look, I almost messed that one up. And I like this. And the last one is grumpy. Maybe it's a symptom of age, but I think it's a symptom of the industry. A lot of these appraisers have been working in this business for 20 and 30 years. And 10 years ago, overnight, their income was cut a third. So people are working longer, getting paid less, and having to do more work, which is the story of all our lives. So it's something that we're dealing with right now as an industry. So I'm glad you liked it, Emily.
That's good.
So how do you prepare for an appraisal? We talked about the typical appraiser profile, but this is something that Mike Litzner used to always say in our classes, because I used to do a realtor as well. He'd say it always starts before you submit an offer or list a house. So that's where the appraisal also is. So when you're creating that listing and you're creating that offer for the house, you need to be looking at what values could be supported in the back with the sales that are available now. Because you remember, you have to sell the house twice. You have to sell it once to the buyer and once to the bank. So just because you sold the buyer and you got 26 bids and you went 100,000 over asking, well, guess what? You have to sell that FHA 5% down to the bank, and the bank's gonna just say, sorry, it's $50,000 less, Mr. Home Buyer, what do you want to do? And then the home buyer, or I should say the seller's mad at you because you promised the world and you weren't able to deliver. So a little comparable search, a CMA, I like to do, for you guys, you're going to be doing, abbreviated CMAs or like appraisals, and just doing that beforehand when you submit an offer or do a listing is going to save you a lot of time and headaches. And then the last part, and then we already touched on this, is that you always want to make sure when the appraiser comes, find out what type of loan it's for. Is it for FHA or is it conventional? Because I can't tell you how many times I call a realtor and I proactively ask, I go, just so you know, this is for an FHA. And they go, what? Why is this for an FHA? And I said, listen, the bank just orders it. You have to talk to your clients about that. So then they find out that in the middle of the process, they submit an offer conventional, and then in the middle they switch it to FHA, and the house has peeling paint everywhere, unblocked sockets, and it's a whole mess. And it's just bad business. Exactly. So it's just bad business, and that's why you want to ask before the appraiser gets there, because if we get there and we do the inspection and it's FHA and you guys don't have the house FHA ready, we're going to have to come back, which costs a buyer $200 more, and it costs the seller 2 weeks in closing time because we have to get back out there again. So this is the appraisal order process in the background. This is what you don't see. So, step number one is this is what starts the appraisal order process for us. So when you guys get the property under contract, the order is placed by the lender with the AMC. The AMC then chooses the appraiser, who then receives the order, which is step number 2, and schedules the inspection. This is where we call you, schedule the inspection. Number 3 is the actual inspection of the property. Most inspections take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the size of the property. Obviously, if it's a very large home, Hamptons, North Shore, it could take an hour to an hour and a half. If it's 5 to 10,000 square feet. To do the inspection of the property, we take down all the salient features of the property, bedrooms, baths, updates, all that. And then we go back to our house and we write the report up, and then we submit it to the bank. There's about a 2-day lag time from when we submit it to the bank to when you guys actually are notified and find out what the value is. And that's because there's a back and forth process between us and the bank in terms of revisions and revisions. So sometimes there's things that, you know, weren't clarified in the appraisal, or information that was contradicting that we have to address that's found later on by underwriting. So that's why sometimes when you call an appraiser and you're like, hey, where's the appraisal? And they're like, hey, we sent it yesterday. And you're like, they haven't told us that they have it. Well, that's because of this process right here. So there's that 1 or 2 day delay. So don't worry, no one lost the appraisal. It's just in between companies right now, because it has to go from the appraiser to the AMC, from the AMC to the lender. If there's a revision, it goes from the lender to the AMC, from the AMC to the appraiser, and back and forth through that terrible middle management position. So that's, can you guys tell I really enjoy appraisal management companies? So now we're going to get into how to do an appraisal, basically doing a search like an appraisal. Then real quick, Dennis, I do want to answer that question. What types of revisions would there be? Revisions. So let's just say the appraiser, you know, didn't explain why a sale was over 6 months, especially in a moving market. You know, you got to explain why you weren't able to find better sales that are newer than this one. So you get to write certain comments like that. If there's a discrepancy between what's on public records and what's on and what's in the report. And then Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have these systems where basically, if they find any discrepancy in the appraisal or the value, it does an auto-generated comp search and spits comps back at you that you have to address and say, hey, why didn't you use this? Or why didn't you do that comp? Why didn't you use this one? And then you have to explain it. It's a lot of work. There's no extra money for it. And that's why you're seeing a lot of appraisers leaving the bank world, is because there's so many things that need to be taken into account now. Whereas in the non-lender world, like divorce, estate courts and all that, you don't have to address them. So that's why the world is shifting, as we all are. So, first step is you want to know your subject in and out. I like to use 4 steps to determine that. So you're going to search the MLS or public records. You want to get the gross living area, bedrooms, bath counts, basement, all of that. And then, you know, just have that printed out so you can see what you're working with. Step 2 is you want to determine the condition of the property. Appraisers use a C, it's called a C classification system. And we're going to go over that in a little bit of how to determine what a property is, what C classification. So you want to determine the condition of the property, because this is how appraisers make adjustments based on older and newer homes against each other. And then you want to determine the location. So whether it's, you know, on a residential street, busy road, across from a house of worship, you know, any type of influence that could positively or negatively affect the property location wise, and obviously view as well. This is just a quick overview. Appraisal, just a quick background. It takes about 2 years to get your license. 2,500 hours under a supervisory appraiser, plus I think 400 hours of schooling. So to do all of that in 2 hours and teach you that is, you know, not feasible. So I'm trying to cherry pick the biggest portions that you're going to deal with and work with on a daily basis. And then the last thing is note all the notable features, meaning, is there, you know, a finished basement? Is there an in-ground pool? Is there a tennis court? Is there, you know, 2-car garage? You know, what are those extra features that your house has that maybe other houses in the area don't? So, step 1, know your subject. So this is a quick overview. We're going to do this in a case study. So, but just to find subject property information on the left in MLS, you go to public records, put the street address and the street name, and it'll pull up a property record card like this, and which gives you very useful information such as, you know, lot size, school district, building size on some properties, mostly in Nassau. Queens, it's hit or miss, and Suffolk is pretty non-existent. That's why you're probably gonna have to use another data source such as Geodata or the actual town public record sites. If you guys figure out how to use them efficiently, let me know.
Oh, yeah.
So step number 2, and this is my favorite part of the presentation because the biggest takeaway is how appraisers classify condition of a house. So we want to define a condition of the house. We use a C-class system, which is C1 to C6. If you look on your handout in the sales comparison approach, I think it's page, I want to say page 1 or 2. It's basically the one where all the sales are gridded up. And then you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see a section that says condition. And it'll say C1 or C3, C4, you know, all the way across. So that is what we call the condition rating. So when we're picking comparable sales, we're making a determination on that sale of whether it's a C3, a C4, a C2, and then we're comparing it to the subject's C rating and making an adjustment based upon that. A nice large portion of the adjustments are based on condition. And that's why, you know, updating your house is always brings the value up because we're doing the adjustments based on condition. So we're going to go through all 6 classes together. And at the end, and during our case study, you'll be able to identify, and you should be able to identify and figure out which sales are which condition class. So C1 is new construction. That's self-explanatory. New construction in Long Island also includes houses that have had the top of the house chopped off, and then a whole second story built up, and then the whole first floor fully gutted renovated. It has to be full gut renovated, including the foundation. We'll also consider that a C1 because number 1, almost pretty much 95% of the house is brand new.
Oh, yes, good morning. My name is Anna Moore. Is he on there?
I got her.
Thank you. Wonderful.
So maybe when we come in, I don't know if Deb wants to do this, but maybe have everybody muted when you come in, just so it auto, you know, no one has to deal with worrying about muting.
Everyone does seem to be with that person who just.
Oh, okay. So let's get into the C classes. So C1 is new construction. Very simple, self-explanatory. So I would say 95 to 100% of the house is brand new constructed with new materials, okay? So C2. C2 is your typical fix and flip, full gut renovation in the past year or 2 of a house. You know, investor comes in, guts the house, does 90% of the work, you know, meaning, you know, the kitchens, the baths, the floors, the walls, the lights, the electric, the furnace, the this, the that. And if they leave like one thing, you know, let's just say, I know some investors that they're like, hey, the boiler is fine, we're not going to change that. That's okay. You can leave like 1, maybe 2 small things, and we'll still consider it C2 construction. So this, you know, in this case, obviously it's a fix and flip. Also pretty easy to identify. So C1 and C2 are very easy to figure out. The next 2 are the ones that are the gray area, I guess. So C3. So there's really no, I mean, there is a definition, but it's such a vague definition. I like to use at least 50% of all the components in the house have been updated in the past 10 years. So meaning in this slide, I have, if you notice, the siding is all updated, the windows are new, has the new portico, the patio's new, because I talked to the homeowner about it. The kitchen's been updated, fully updated in the past 5 years. That includes floor, appliances, countertops, backsplash. The electric was upgraded at 200 amps. But then the bathroom wasn't updated since the 90s. You know, that's an older bathroom. And then in this one also, I remember there was a basement that hadn't really been touched, you know, since the 70s or 60s. So a lot of the features were updated. However, not most of the features, and not less than 50% was updated. So, and it's obviously back I like to say the back of the notebook renovations. So, you look at a house and you're like, hey, you know what? Most of the stuff's updated. Can someone move in there and they don't have to do a lot of work? Yeah, that's a C3 house. There's a couple things, obviously they have to do a bathroom or they have to do a basement but for the most part, everything is pretty updated. So C4, this is your typical average home that's been lived in mostly by either family, whatever, just 20-30 years it's been lived in. No major renovations, or there are some, but it's less than 50% of the house. Maybe they got a new roof, they changed some windows. In this case, I know like they upgraded the countertops in 2001 or something like that, and they did the siding and the roof. So in this case, it's less than 50% of the house is updated. Obviously, you can tell by the older bathroom, the older kitchen floors and appliances. They have the white appliances, the white dishwasher. And you got the brick facade. It's definitely a little older, from more like 90s, early 2000s. So this is your just classic average home. So if it looks and feels average, it most likely is a C4 home. So if you don't have a lot of updates, C4. So a lot of properties are in this condition. So older C4/C5. The Northeast is a unique place because the properties here are usually anywhere. There's a lot of homes that are older than 70 years old. And because of that, a lot of houses have gone through many different economic life cycles of upgrades. Now, a house like this, for example, this is what I call grandma's house. Well, now it's like old grandma's house. It's like great grandma's house now. It's around 2021, so I guess yeah. But nothing has been updated since like the 50s, 60s, or early 70s. If you look, you got the wooden panel, you got the old spruce cabinetry in the kitchen. You got a newer 70s or 80s refrigerator, or probably 80s, 90s refrigerator. The bathroom has that old wood, the claw tub, subway tile, aluminum siding, asbestos ceilings. We don't call it that. So now from an appraiser standpoint and a lending standpoint, there's no reason why someone couldn't buy this house and live in it. Okay. Because you can buy it, you can live in it, everything works, it's in good condition, not good condition, it's in livable condition. Appraisers don't like to call this C5 because it is livable. And because of that, I know, Susan, the white is coming back now. It's rotating again. So it's a constant cycle. I saw a new house put 70s style, made a 70s style Brady Bunch kitchen, brand new. And I was like, oh, this is what it looked like when it was brand new. This is really nice. And then I can extrapolate it 40 years from now, and I can say, oh, it's going to look how it did when it was built in 1970. Got it. So, but with these houses, banks won't lend on a C5 house. The house needs to be brought up in C4 condition. So most appraisers will consider this a C4 house, but they'll make an adjustment because I can't compare this house. I'm talking in terms of condition, obviously not size and lot size. I can't compare this condition to this condition in good faith. Mm-hmm. However, both are livable. It's just when you put the C5 classification, it's automatically non-lendable by the bank in Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. I feel because we're boxed in as appraisers using this system, I think there should be a C7 and C8 personally, because that's what I use on my private appraisals, like extra designations. But in terms of what we're trying to do here, this would be considered an older C4. Now, there are C5s. C5s is on the edge. If this house it doesn't have one working bathroom, or I've seen houses where the sink was basically the countertops were taken out and they just have a basin for a sink, just a just, I don't know, like a big bucket for a sink, or, you know, where it basically degrades the livability of the house, or the carpets are just really gnarly and really not good. It basically, if you can't live in that house, it's getting closer to a C5, okay? So, all right. And then C6, and mind you, all these pictures are from houses that I've actually been in myself. C6 is basically REO houses before they're cleaned out. A lot of them are either fire damage, water damage, flood damage. This one had roof damage that was leaking for 3 years. The kitchen in the bottom left was just destroyed over the constant leaking over the 3 years. When I appraised this house, I found someone living in the upstairs bedroom, and I said, and I'm in my hazmat mask, and I go, you know, you pretty much, if you stayed in here for like 6 months, you'd probably get some type of respiratory like disease from, you know, whatever it is. And he goes, yeah, but you know, it's I keep the door closed. I'm like, okay. What do you want me to do? It's not my, I told the bank said, yeah, I don't think anybody should live in there. I go, me neither, but hey, listen, it's not my place. So they so this house was not livable, nothing worked, kitchen was destroyed, everything was destroyed in this house. So all right, so after you determine the location of the condition of the subject, you then want to determine the location of the subject. Let me just, can I get a time check? I can't see my time for some reason.
I'm sorry about that. It is 10:42.
Perfect. Okay. I just want to keep myself on track here. Step 3, location. So you want to determine the location of the subject because location has a large influence on value. In this case, if you live, you know, on Stewart Avenue next to a house of worship, you know, you most likely would have some type of you'd be negatively affected because of the amount of noise that you're constantly being exposed to. Same thing, living next to a commercial property, a residential property inside an industrial area, same thing. Being right next to JFK Airport, you know, obviously not the Jamaica part of like near JFK, because the planes are going over every 3 minutes, so everybody's exposed to it. But I'm talking like right on it. So that would be something that affects it. Power lines. If it's those big ones that are in the backyards out east, like in Medford, Quorum, yes, that could absolutely affect it. There is a stigma of people buying near those high tension wires. However, we haven't been able to show or qualify that stigma, but we know it's there. Like when we talk to realtors, the first thing that people mention when they go to a house like that, they say, I don't like living near those high tension wires. Yes, they look like little mini Eiffel Towers. So, and just remember, the location also works the other way. You know, if you're on the water, or if you're looking over a cliff, like you're in like Rocky Point, you're looking out into the Sound, or, you know, you're next to a park. You know, there's positive ones as well. So then step 4, you want to note all the notable features of the house, such as, you know, 1-car garage, in-ground pool, tennis court, deck, patio, all of that. So now that you have all the information on the subject, you're going to start doing a comparable search. Now, when you do a comparable search, I like to give you guys common guidelines that the bank kind of wants us to follow. So common guidelines are 1 mile of the subject property, 1 year from the inspection date, within 300 square feet of the subject, same school district, and similar condition of the property. You know, you can go 1 condition rating up, 1 condition rating down. So if you're C3, a C2, and a C4 is okay. You know, they don't want you using new construction to compare it to a C4. So these guidelines are just that. They're guidelines. If you have a house, a cape in East Meadow, you should be following these guidelines, because the capes in East Meadow are plentiful. There's a lot of them. There's no reason for an appraiser to leave that neighborhood and go to another neighborhood and pull another comp that's, you know, over a mile away and a year old, because there's probably 3 or 4 right there in the neighborhood within a quarter mile that are going to be similar to that cape. Now, if you're in Huntington and you got an 1880 colonial that's on, you know, an acre property, now you're getting a little tougher. You know, you're going to have to expand. You're going to have to expand over a mile. You're going to have to expand over 300 square feet. The condition's probably going to have to change. So it's all about how many sales that are similar to yours that are in the area that are going to determine how tight or loose you're going to follow these guidelines. What is GLA? GLA is gross living area. So it's
Sorry,
just the amount, it's the amount of living space inside the actual home that is finished, heated, and livable space. So if you could, for example, a lot of people do a garage conversion. As long as it's heated, finished, and as interior access and part of the house, we consider it living space. I know the next question is going to be a permit. We don't pull permits. That's up to the banks and the attorneys. If you guys want to complain, not you, but if the buyers want to complain about permits in this market, they're most likely going to be met with resistance by sellers. But a lot of banks don't care, and a lot of banks do care. So it's just a flip of the coin on that one. But for our purposes, as long as it's heated, was finished in a workmanlike manner, and it's connected to the house, we're not going to care. What is it? The don't ask, don't tell policy, right? So don't bring it up. And yes, Jane.
And how about basements? Basements, how does that work in terms of that? You've got a garage, if it's heated and.
So basements go on a separate line item. So if you're looking at your appraisal that I gave you guys, that handout, you'll see the condition, and then under that, you'll see gross living area. It'll probably say like 1,200 square feet or 1,400 square feet. Below that, you'll see a space that says basement. And basement is its own separate line item adjustment. The first number on the basement square footage is the size of the basement. And the second number is the finished square footage of the basement. Okay. And then below that, the next line is the number of rooms in that basement. Rec rooms, bedrooms, baths, and other rooms. And you should see that on the appraisal under basement section. It's about halfway down the grid.
Okay,
Right,
so we have a bunch of questions, but I'm wondering if we should continue with you and then get back to them, because otherwise I'm not sure if you're going to get through the whole.
Yeah, so we have, what do we have, 10:50? When do we end? We end 12 o'clock? Yeah, we have time. We're good.
Okay, great. Then we're going to go back up. Hilda had a question about corner properties and how those are considered by the appraiser, if there is some general idea.
Corner homes. Okay, so this goes back to what I was saying before. I like to think that there would be, depending on the property. Like I grew up in a corner home. I currently live in a corner home. I've only known corner homes. So I don't like how they're laid out. I think you have a side yard and a little backyard, and I don't like it. However, in this market, I've found that no one cares because everybody just wants to get a house and get in. I haven't found any reason to make an adjustment for it. Personally, I don't like it, but professionally, I don't see a difference. It's not showing up in the stats. So, but yes, and I like to reiterate this too, is that appraisals are a general opinion of value. Your guys' job is to make sure that you get a premium, or in some cases, if the house is junky, it gets a discount for the value of your property. Just because I say it's 500,000, you can get it for 520 if you have all those extra features that the house has. Let's just say you have, I'm going to answer the next question, a walkout basement. And, obviously I'm not going to be able to, I can't quantify a walkout basement versus an interior basement. However, a buyer is going to be able to say, hey, I like that there's a walkout basement. There's a potential for a rental. Well, I can't say that because we don't do rentals in basements, but there is that potential. So in their mind, they're saying, here's extra premium things that I can do with this house that do not necessarily get represented in the appraisal. So we're generalists, and you guys add the premiums or discounts to the property when you do the selling. So let's check out, the home is on an electric tower on property and backs the Rhode Island Railroad. How does it affect the appraisal? Thanks. I'm assuming that you have this exact situation. If I had to take a guess, if you were Are you, Gabrielle, are you at the end? Are you before the end of the line? Basically, are you in Babylon, Huntington? Are you before Babylon, Huntington, or was it Ronkonkoma? Nassau. Okay, so you're before the line. So you're in Nassau. Yeah, so that's going to affect it greatly because you're going to have a lot of train traffic. So if you were past the end of the lines, you wouldn't have as much train traffic. So it wouldn't be as big of an adjustment. Don't hold me to this. I can throw out a number for you. You're probably looking anywhere between 10 to 15%, depending on how close it is to that train track and how much train traffic comes through there. So, because people do not like, especially moving out to Long Island, they do not like to be near trains. Or I should say, they don't like to be on top of trains. They like to live near the train. They don't like to be on the train. So it's going to be a big hit, usually about 10 to 15%. In this market, I'd probably say 10 because people are more forgiving in increasing markets of the properties that they buy. And then on the opposite end, when it's declining, the first properties to go are always the ones that are near the trains, on the busy roads, on the, all the ones that have bad locations. Those are usually the first properties to go. So let's see, walkout basement, we answered that. And basement apartments, no permits, CO. Okay, basement apartments. If it doesn't have a stove, it is not an apartment to us. If it doesn't have a stove, it is not an apartment to us. If it doesn't have a stove, it is not an apartment to us. Okay, so basements, again, we're looking at it on a market basis. Are there finished basements? Are there not? We don't have access to the permits. We can't see the permits. The only way we would know is if someone told us. The only way we would know is if someone told us. The only way we would know is if someone told us. So if we don't know about the COs of the permits, that's a job for the attorneys, the banks, and you guys. That's all your job. Okay? You guys fight over that or forgive that or do whatever. If you have a finished basement and a bath, what we see is what we're putting in our report. Okay? If you tell us, then we're going to have to report it. So if you tell us, we're going to have to report it. All right. So let's get on here. So comparable search, we want to do the common guidelines. These are it for the bank. So real quick, search how an appraiser, we're going to do a case study on this, click residential unavailable, put the town, put the school district, you want to put the, as a detached house, full basement, one family, Cape, staying to Cape, 1 year back, closed sales. I'm going to go through this quickly just because we're going to do this live. So I just want to do a quick overview here. So when we're doing the search, when we pull up all our comps, our house is right here, this little red area right here, a little dot. So we basically like to break out how, neighborhoods out by divisions in major roads, major locations. If we're very familiar with the area, we know that, houses over here are worth more and houses over here are worth less. For example, for a long time, Barnum Woods was like, the place where it went for like an extra 5% over the rest of the market in East Meadow. So it's the appraiser needs to know what they're doing. However, if they're doing a comp search, they'll just look at major boundaries. So if I can find 4 or 5 comps right in this little spot, why wouldn't I use them? Obviously, I'd move down to the green too, but I kind of want to stay pretty close to our subject. So we will also typically choose comps that are, we'll choose an older comp if it's right there. Like you have a house across the street that's the same size, same square footage, same everything, and it's sold back in, let's say February, or let's just say December last year. We'll use that comp over something that's down, let's just say in this neighborhood, like let's say 177, like down, or 71 right here. Because a house across the street that's the same and similar in all ways is very indicative of what the value of the house should be, obviously with a time adjustment. So when appraiser even asks someone if they have permits pulled for a certain thing they see. Jacqueline, sometimes they will ask, it's really dependent, appraiser dependent. If you get me, I don't ask any questions. I literally just go through the house. I take notes of everything. I ask you when the updates are, and that's about it. Whatever you decide to tell me is on you. If there's something that is really out of the ordinary, for example, I had someone that had a what are those tractor trailers on their property, the back part of a tractor trailer. I know you're not allowed to store those on residential properties. Like, I know that for a fact. And so I asked, do you have a permit to store that, on your property? And she said, yes, because I have this business, and they gave me an exception for it. And I said, okay, it has to be something really extraordinary and out of the ordinary, like really extraordinary for me to ask. Some appraisers do ask, and they ask about everything, and they like to make their jobs and lives harder, but look like you. The development type home is not within the development. Wait, what? The development not within a development type home. I don't understand the question. So you can rewrite it, and I'll answer in a little bit. So keep in mind important points to consider when you're doing a comparable search. You want to start with the most specific criteria. So when you're searching, you want to search capes, full basements, if this matches the subject, bath count, family size, and within I even use 6 months now, because the market's moving so fast. I like to just search 6 months, see what comps are there. Those are probably your best ones. If you don't have enough, then you can expand out from there. A key important point is called bracketing. For bank appraisals, this means that you want to make sure that if your subject is a C4 condition, you want to make sure you have something that's C4 or something that's C2 and C3 and C5. You want to make sure your subject's always in the middle or similar to all the salient features. So if your subject's 1,000 square feet, you want to make sure you have something that's 1,100 square feet and 900 square feet. So you're trying to keep your property in the middle of all the sales. And then you're going to be to the range of one end or the range to the other end. So.
Sorry, there was 2 questions. I'm not sure if we should get to them. One is.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to them. Let me just finish this slide. Perfect. And then we'll get to them. So so after I find my 3 or 4 comps, I'll print them out, and I like to lay them against each other. I don't do this personally anymore because I've gotten so good at it that I can do it in my head and hold the data as I'm doing it. But if you're starting out or you're newer, I like to just print them out. You print them out, and then you say, hey, where does our subject in relation to these 3 comps sit? So is our subject, in between the 450 and the 500 house, or is it in between the 5 to 510 house? Well, if you're saying that your house is in between the 5 to the 510, you're mostly somewhere in that value range. Whereas if you're saying, hey, my house is more between the 450 and the 500 in terms of all the features, then you're most likely going to be somewhere in there. And depending on what the features are of the subject, you'll be to the higher range or to the lower range. So, okay, so we're going to do it. Before we start the case study, I'll answer these questions, and then we'll do the case study. So let's see. All right, our condo appraisal is still 2 comps in community and 1 out of the community. Yes, Antoinette. However, and I'm literally dealing with this right now, there are certain new developments on Long Island that they decided to build these really grand, luxurious condos that are going for $2 million. And there's no other ones in the area that bracket it. I can't find any other sales that are similar to these 3-bedroom, 3-bath condos that are over $2 million. They didn't make them yet. So this is one of the first developments, or one of the first developments that are like this. So yes, in general, it's 2 comps in community, 1 out of the community. All right, regarding flood zone versus tiny water view, do they offset each other? Interesting question. The flood zone. So a lot of appraisers don't really take into consideration flood zone. It's not that they don't want to, it's just sometimes they don't know how to. I do know how to. I'm trained on how to. There's definitely a loss in purchasing power for a house that is in a flood zone and a house that's not in a flood zone. So for example, let's just say, you know, your flood insurance is $2,400 a year. You're losing $200 a month in purchasing power, which equates to around, I think, $30,000 or $40,000 in purchasing power in terms of your mortgage. So I usually do an adjustment around anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000, depending on how bad the flood zone is, which does become very pertinent in certain areas like Lindenhurst, Massapequa, Freeport, where some houses were raised, some houses weren't, some houses got flooded by Sandy, some houses didn't. So it's you definitely want to, if you want to mitigate that risk as an appraiser, we try to then only choose other comps that are in that similar flood zone. I'll only choose different flood zone comps if I don't have flood zone comps that match each other. So it's something to be very aware of in those waterfront areas. So to answer your question, it depends. And a lot of this is, it depends. So it depends on the area, the market and everything. So a flood zone could negate a tiny water bill. It's a standard 3 amount of comps bring an appraisal appointment. You can bring 3, you can bring 6, you can bring however many you feel that you want to, you know, bolster your support for your house. But please make sure they're actually comparable sales and not just random sales that have the value that you want and have nothing to do with the subject. So, because when you do that, then the appraiser's like, these sales are garbage, you don't know what you're doing. Now we're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Not that we would anyway, it's just, when you look at, you know, the comps that you give us kind of give us an implication of like where your head is at. If a house is under contract for 900, I saw a bunch of sales there for 800, and then you're giving me sales for 950, and they look nothing like the subject. They're 1,000 square feet bigger, they're new construction, this. I know that you got a really high offer, you want to make the deal happen, and I'm not going to be as inclined to do that at all because I know where your head's at. So I always like to also defer to Deb in terms of these bringing stuff to the appraisal in terms of what the company policy is. So if you guys like to do 3 comps, I forget what it is. I think it's, you know, you like to do 3 or 4 similar comps, you can bring it as well. So I don't want to ever give advice against the company policy.
No, Scott, there really isn't a policy that we have regarding, you know, what to bring to the appraiser. But I can say that when you do, to kind of offer it to the appraiser, because not every appraiser wants them. So we want to be able to put it in, you know, in a way, something like, hey, Scott, I have a few comps that I ran. Do you want them? You know, like kind of ask permission. Some are very gracious and some say no. So you don't want to just hand it to them. That's my only take on that.
Yep, and I'd say it's 50-50. I'm one of the appraisers that you can bring what you want. I actually encourage it because it gives me an insight into what the agent's thinking. So I know where their head's at in terms of what they want and value and what they're looking for. So, and you know, it's just extra knowledge for me to look at. Relates to, it's taught to say this relates to the sale of the house. Yep. So if area has homes on slabs, subject home on a basement, how much value added? Depends on the area again. Typical house, East Meadow, I'm gonna say if it's a slab, if it's on a slab, usually anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 extra. If you have a basement that's unfinished to a slab, and then it's another, you know, $8,000 to $15,000 for a finished basement. So it could be anywhere from you know, to $18,000 to $30,000, $18,000 to $35,000 difference in value between a house with a basement, not a basement. But again, let's go back to the buyer. Most buyers want a basement nowadays. So that's why it's very important to pick houses that are comparable. So that's a question for the bank. I don't really know what the co-op process is for the bank and the buyer's application. We're more on the appraiser side. And what about Stony Brook area? I'm sorry, I can't answer that because I haven't been there in a while. So I do a lot of Nassau and high-end homes in Hamptons and the Gold Coast now. I haven't been out to Stony Brook probably over a year, so can't answer that one today. So let's do a case study. So this house, 269 Green Valley Road, East Meadow. We had an effective date of February 2018. I apologize for the older date. I do have to update for the next one. It's just been so crazy this past year, 18 months, that I haven't had time to do much of anything except appraise. So let's go to the first step. First step, public, we want to pull up public records. Oh, oops, hold on. Pull up public records. So let me show you how to do that. Pop into MLS, we log in. I put my password on screen. You guys steal my account. Okay. Let's see. All right, so left-hand side, you click public records. Can you guys see that okay? Or do you want me to
Yes.
zoom in a little? I'll just do one zoom.
You can see.
Okay, so left-hand side, you click public records, click the county, Nassau. Then you're gonna put the street number, 269, street name, Green Valley. And I like to teach all the realtors how to use, I like to only use MLS because most realtors only have access to MLS. A lot of people don't have access to geodata. You know, more the realtors that have been in the business for a long time, they'll have access to it. But I like to be able to do everything with MLS to show you guys. So here we have, this house. So, we have pertinent characteristics. So I print this out. I got, school district, East Meadow. I got a prior sale here for $395 back in 2014. You got 1,365 square foot house. We got a one-car garage, oil heating, built in 1951, 2 full baths. So you're gathering the information there. So now that we got the information for the subject, I'm going to go back here. We want to determine the condition. So these are the photos from the property. If you guys can in chat, type in what condition rating you think I would give this house. So see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I will answer your question while that's happening. What about garages versus no garages? Depending on the area, $8,000 to $20,000. Because certain areas don't have basements and garages are more valuable. Other areas, everybody has a garage and it's not worth that much because a lot of people don't use the garages for cars anymore. They use it for storage. So all depends. All right, looks like a large majority have figured this thing out. And I would say definitely a C3. So, and here's why. So we have new siding, new windows in the front. There is older siding in the back, but you got a new brick patio that was just redone. I know you guys don't know that, but I knew that in my interview with the buyer. But we're just doing it based upon pictures. Kitchen is updated. It's around 10 years old. There's some, I would say, maybe not as high quality, but it's definitely updated. The bathroom was just newly renovated, both bathrooms. And then you can tell the rooms also were updated because it has recessed lighting. And everything's painted, molded, and very nice. Most of these homes did not have lighting installed in them back in the 1950s and 60s. So when you see recessed lighting, they've changed out the ceilings, which usually means they changed out the walls as well and put molding and everything to finish out the house. So C3 is the correct condition rating. So good job. All right. So then we're going to determine the condition. So I like to use Google Earth for everything. So I'm just going to 269 Green Valley Road. Oh, not Scotts Valley. East Meadow. And we're going to go on in. I just like to do a quick aerial view because it just is get a lay of what's around it. So we're definitely in a residential neighborhood surrounded by residential houses. We're not abutting anything. We're close to, looks like what, is it apartment complex? Apartment complex, near a busy road, commercial influences, but for our particular property, there's no influence at all. We're in a neighborhood residential street. So, and obviously from the street view, we're a regular road. So there's no locational influence on this property. And then we're gonna note the features. We got a brick patio, got the porch in the front, and we got a 1-car garage, okay? So that's that. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a COM search. So I'm gonna show you how we do a COM search. And again, I apologize, since this is an older effective date, I have to use archived listings because I just passed the 3-year mark on MLS sales. I'm not going to do this. I'm just doing this for this presentation. So ignore me clicking the archives, okay? So ignore that. So you're gonna click residential and unavailable, okay? And then you click continue. The reason why you're clicking unavailable is because we want actual closed sales. We don't want available listings currently. You guys, when you're doing your CMA analysis, you're using current available sales because you're trying to figure out what your competition is doing right now. Whereas in the appraisal world, we're looking at old sales, old data, because we want to make sure the value is supported for whatever you're doing. So for you guys, there's going to be pretty much 2 different types of values you're looking at. You're going to be looking at the current and what's happening today, and then the supported value. And you're going to try to make sure those 2 reconcile with each other. So let's do our search. So we want to do town of East Meadow. We know the school district is East Meadow. We know that's a 1-family. We know it's a Cape. I like to put expanded Cape and Cape because you never know, what an agent likes to put for expanded Cape. People with like 1 little dormer in the front, they like 1 little doghouse, 2 doghouses in the front, but there's no expansion elsewhere. They call that an expanded Cape. Some people, I think that's just a regular Cape, but everybody has different opinions on that. So let's see. And I think the effective date was the 1st. So we go back a year. All right, and then I like to put full basement. All right, so we got 80 sales. Okay, so that's a pretty nice number in terms of sales, especially considering the whole East Meadow market. There's probably something like around 300 to 400 sales a year in East Meadow. So we just dropped it down to 25% of the available sales, which is really good. So what I like to do is check them all, click map. I like to always look at the comparable search as a map. And then you're going to click location up at the top left here, location, type in your address. And then you'll be able to see where your house is in comparison to all the other houses. Okay, so now what you do is you're going to start looking for homes that are superior, inferior, and similar. Okay, so as I'm going through them, I know my house is in C3 condition. I know my house has 2 bathrooms. I know I have a full basement, but we already put the full basement. So I like to know all that criteria. So based on these photos, what time is it? 11:14, good. Based on these photos, what is the condition of this house? If you want me to make them bigger, I can go like this. All right, so we got a lot of mixed messages here, but now that everybody I think's seen the full picture, it is a C2. So 90% of the house has been renovated. All these baths are new, the kitchen's new, the basement's new, the siding on the back looks new. That looks like a refinished deck. Remember we talked about the boilers and the hot water heaters. I mean, this looks like an older boiler, but remember, you know, 1 or 2 items is okay. And then if you want to back up your analysis, you'll look at the remarks and it says completely renovated from top to bottom. So you know that this is a house that for the most part was top to bottom. We're going to call it a C2. So that now has established our high end of value. So now we know that our house is not C2. It's similar in all regards except for 1 extra bath and C2 condition. So we now know that we're probably going to be below 555. Obviously, these prices are from 2018, not today. So let's say, it's like I wouldn't use something like this just because it looks like an outlier. I mean, it's on the busy road. It looks like a small cape, no additions or anything. Give me a reason why I wouldn't use this house.
It's much bigger.
Yep, exactly. There's yep.
Two houses in one.
You have the whole extra expansion on the left-hand side, which is pretty much probably 2, maybe even 3 bedrooms and a bath over that garage, which means the house is probably going to be about 500 to 600 square feet bigger. Exactly, and not comparable. So that's how a lot of these you can just quickly just get rid of. Same thing with this one. You know, there is no expansions. This is a baby cape, 1,000 square feet. You know, old aluminum siding. It is somewhat updated inside, but not really. Just a bathroom and some finished floors. I wouldn't really use this. So let's see. All right, Betty Road. All right, here's a good one. What condition do you think this is?
See more.
Updated kitchen, new floors, new ceilings, new floors and ceilings throughout, new bath. That was another new bath. All right, so the rooms are okay. You know, not refinished floors, but nothing serious. Now, this is a dead giveaway for a basement that has not been touched. So this is right here, you have the paneling on the wall. So now you know the whole basement hasn't really been touched. And then you look at the outside and it has aluminum siding. And, you know, just a very plain concrete patio in the back. Exactly. That's now with all that description, we're going to C3. Exactly. So I would say our subject is very similar to this one. Maybe I would say slightly inferior just because of the outside updates. You know, it doesn't, you know, the windows haven't been touched. The siding hasn't been touched, you know, just slightly inferior, maybe similar. Okay. So now I know my subject's 505. So this was 505. This was 555. So I know my subject's a little slightly superior than Betty Road and inferior to Martin Road. So then I like to find one more comp. So this looks like another good one. So same thing, you know, it's nice siding, nice windows. So this looks, so, you know, the inside is okay in terms of like the walls and the baseboards and everything, refinished floors. It's clean, you know, it's an updated kitchen. What's the, if you want to put the condition rating on this one, you can start doing it. So we got some new carpets, painted walls. Same thing, new bath. You know, maybe not as high quality as the other bathroom that we just looked at. You know, and this is a pretty plain bathroom in the basement. You know, new carpeting in the bath. You know, but you got some, it looks like the siding maybe was done like 15 years ago, 10, 15. Backyard's good. So exactly, I would say C3. exactly. So a homeowner did a lot of updates to this. However, not like a whole gut reno. So, and that's 415, right? So those are the comps that, those out of the 4 comps I just picked, I picked 3 that were good. So let's go back to here. So just what we were talking about, we got Betty Road that we were talking about. I like to give an overall comparison. So I said it was slightly inferior. And then Martin Road, which is the 555, superior because it's in that C2 condition. And then Grant Avenue, which was similar, overall similar to the house. I mean, this one I think was our best one in terms of in comparison to our house. So remember what we talked about laying out the comps in order. So I like to go from lowest to highest. So in this example, Betty would go on the lowest, Martin on the highest, Grant in the middle. Now we're gonna say, where is our subject in relationship to all these sales? Our subject is most similar to Grant. So I think it should go right in the middle here. It's definitely a little superior than Betty, definitely inferior to Martin. So my subject property is most likely going to fall in a range, probably around 515, about 515 the value, plus or minus like 10,000. I like to use a 2% like swing both ways because like we talked about before, a realtor can get that extra premium on the house. If you had an outside entry for a basement, you probably could get 525 for this house. Whereas if you didn't have the outside entry, you had an old boiler that had to be replaced fairly soon, or like there was a major component that you knew that had to be taken care of, you might then be at like 510, 505. So that's the premium and discount factor that I like to use in my head for, about 2% up or down either way, depending on the premium features or the discount features of the property. And that's how we look at it. We just take a superior, an inferior, and then try to find a similar and see where we land. And then you'll know your value range and where you should be. Let's see, lowest. Do you take into consideration how to increase the house closed 6 months ago? Whenever consider increases. If a house closed 6 months ago, do you take into consideration increases? If a house closed 6 months ago, it went under contract probably 30, 60 days before that. So everything is based upon the effective date. So we do our valuation based upon the day we inspect the house for bank appraisals. Be very clear on that. So whatever the day we come and inspect is the day we do that's the day of the value that we're going to use. We definitely use prior sales, especially ones that happened in the past 3 years, as a basis for our value for the subject. So if your subject sold 6 months or a year ago, I don't want to say we're going to use that heavily, but we're going to use that heavily in our analysis. So if it sold for 500 and you did not do anything for 6, and there was nothing done to the house 6 to 12 months ago, and you're just the buyer's just reselling it, that's going to be our starting price that we're going to work from going forward. Home double line decreases 10 to 20,000. Yeah, double line usually is anywhere from like 3 to 5%. So 3% of 500,000 is like 15,000. 5% is like 25,000. So yeah, around there. So, and it depends on how busy we're talking. If you're on, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of a road here. Someone give me a road. Stewart Ave, if you're on Stewart Avenue, I'm probably gonna do 5%. If you're on, I'm just trying to think of a secondary road here. My goodness. Veterans Ave. Oh, Veterans Ave, that's out east, right? That's like 4 lanes, if I remember correctly. Prospect Ave. Basically, if it's one lane, maybe 2. Double line, probably 3%. If it's a double line, 4 lanes total, like boom, 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 I'd probably say more 5 to 7. So yeah, like Jerusalem is probably like 5%. Prospect, that's less, right?
Someone
So
needs
that's
to
like
mute. Sorry. Deb, maybe?
what?
And if you bring it,
I got it.
Just maybe. Got it, thanks.
No problem. So whenever you're looking at comps in this crazy market, you have an inferior that's selling more and a superior selling less. And these are your only comps. If those are your only comps, Diane, I would like to know what town you're in, because that's a tough sell for me to say that there's only 2 comps. There's got to be, most markets and most houses, there's more than 2 comps, even if I have to go to another town to make it happen. So, but yes, there are outliers too. And that's back to what we were saying about how a house can set the market. There are also times where, yes, congratulations, you paid $30,000 more for a house, but if you paid $100,000 more for a house and it was a cash offer, we might discredit that sale and say that it's an outlier because it's not in line with the rest of the market. And so there might be some influence that we don't know about. Maybe there was a side deal where they said, hey, you know, pay us $100,000 more on this one and we'll throw in our, you know, we'll throw in a jet ski or something with the house. I don't know. People make concessions all the time, or we'll have the house furnished. You can keep all the furnishings. So that's something you have to research and take into consideration. You won't have access to that information. That's usually on the contract, but some people sell the furniture with their house and that's part of the purchase price. Kim, Deb's going to send out she's going to send out the presentation at the end of the class. So Susan, that's called highest and best use. So that is something that we have to take into consideration whenever we do an appraisal. Most houses are in residential neighborhoods, in residential lots. The highest and best use is a residential property. However, let's take a place like Melville. You had a lot of houses, old farmhouses that were reconverted and rezoned to commercial office space. Now, if your property is worth more as a commercial property, it should absolutely sell higher than what it's for. Now, you're going to run into an issue. The issue being, if that's the case, your house is no longer the highest and best use for that house as a single family home. And if that's the case, the bank won't lend on the property because now you're using the house, what we call an interim use. So you're not using in property in its highest terms of value. And banks won't lend on interim use. They'll only lend on highest and best use. So you would probably need a commercial lender to be able to purchase that type of property. So let's get into the FHA appraisal. We got 20 minutes, right? Is that about right, Jane?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, no, we have a half hour, 11:28.
Oh, perfect. We're right on time. We might even be early.
That's great.
So FHA appraisal. I like to go over the nuances of this. A lot of realtors are not, especially newer realtors, are not savvy, and I think older realtors aren't privy to the newer rules that they might be coming across. So it is becoming more popular as inflation starts eating the value of our dollar. Sorry if this sounds like a tirade against the Fed. As the inflation keeps making us having to spend more and more money, our buyers, especially in my generation, are forced to buy at the tippy top of their price range on Long Island. And because of that, a lot of them are going for FHA financing because they want the lowest possible down payment of the 3.5%. Now, because it's an FHA appraisal, that's not something you should be worried about. Because if you have a house that has any type of updates, most of the stuff is taken care of in FHA. Now, if you have an older home that hasn't been touched since the 1970s or the 80s, or even the 60s, 50s, you're going to have a problem. You know, there's usually going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 things that are going to be wrong with that house that have to be addressed before it can pass for FHA insurance liability. So every house needs to meet the minimum property requirements. We're going to go over 3 major ones today, and then quickly gloss over 10 or 11 other ones at the end. So the reason why you want to be aware when the appraiser calls to schedule and you want to find out what type of loan it is, you want to make sure if it's an FHA that your house can pass inspection. Because when you don't pass an inspection, the buyer is going to be required to pay another $200 to $300 for the appraiser to come back out to the property to inspect it, to make sure all those requirements were met. And then it takes at least a week between the appraisal being completed and then the rescheduling of the inspection for the buyer to come out. So now you just delayed 1 to 2 weeks of closing and $200 to $300 on the buyer side for failing an FHA inspection, which is easily avoidable. So you want to look like a hero, make sure that you get this done beforehand and not after. So now we're going to go over some common fails. Let me get there we go. All right, so a couple of things that we're going to be looking at. This is just like a quick overview, and then I'm going to do 3 specific ones. So the roof. One of the things that we always have to comment is on the roof and the condition of the roof. Most roofs are pretty much, I mean, most people get their roofs fixed after about 3 layers. If you have more than 3 layers on a roof, then we're probably going to make a note of it and say, hey, the roof has been reaching the end of its economic life. It's something that needs to be addressed. So just make sure that the roof's in good condition. If we have to go into the attic on every FHA appraisal. So if you know it's an FHA appraisal, make sure the attic is accessible. The drop stair can be pulled down, or the scuttle is not nailed in. I can't tell you how many times the scuttle is nailed in and I have to leave and come back just to go look in an attic. It's very frustrating, but make sure that it's accessible. And then before the appraiser gets there, go look in the attic, because I can't tell you how many times I've been up in the attic and the realtor's right there at the bottom of the stairs, or at the bottom of the ladder. I look and there's just a giant water spot right on the subroofing. And I go, hey, do you know the roof has a big giant water spot on the roof? And they're like, oh no, we haven't been up there. I go, okay, so well, that needs to be addressed. And then that causes a whole big problem. And that's why, home inspections should check those things, but just make sure as a realtor, check that. Okay. Utilities have to be on, all of them. Gas, electric, water. I don't care if the house is winterized for the winter and it's a away owner or an absentee owner because they live in Florida now. You're going to have to de-winterize the house and get all the utilities on. It's a pain in the butt, but the bank requires it. And actually most conventional banks require it. Deb, do you have a question?
No, well, I think you were talking about the roof. So there's a question from Denise.
Yeah.
I see in FHA hand that a roof should not be leaking and needs to have at least 2 years of economic life. This statement is so subjective. How does an appraiser determine that? I thought that was pretty relevant to your roof conversation.
You're right. It is pretty subjective. Basically, we're looking for signs of deterioration. If we see really bad curling, and I'll show you in the next, I think it's at the end of the presentation, like it'll be like in 10 minutes, I'll show you some roof examples. But like if it has serious curling, or there's, wet spots on the subroof, or there's things missing, that means that the roof is nearing the end of its economic life. As long as the roof looks okay, it just has to look okay. It doesn't have to look special, it just has to look okay. It doesn't need to be new. As long as all the panels are on it, and there's no leaks anywhere, we're gonna automatically assume that it's greater than 2 years economic life yet. If you got curling, if you got things missing, if you have leaks, now you're getting towards the end of your roof life. So will the appraiser bring his ladder? Blah, 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 blah. Bring his ladder. So this is something that's I've been having trouble with my whole life. So I've been doing this for, I said 13 years. I think one time out of 13 years, I was unable to get into the attic because I didn't bring a ladder. Most appraisers, I would say 99% of them, bring ladders. I never got a ladder. I never found the need for one. I always was always tall enough to put my hand up into the scuttle, or I can stand on a chair and get in there. But most of the time appraisers bring their ladders. I try not to do too many FHA appraisals because I don't like going up into the attic. They're dark, spooky, scary places, and I'm not a big fan of them, so. Yes, Dan, that's right. There should never be 3 layers. Correct. That's it. I tell people there shouldn't be 3 layers, but there is. I mean, as long as it's not leaking or anything, you should be good. So roof windows less than 10 years gives more value to the appraisal. Siding, yes, it does in a general sense. So for example, remember we're talking about the C condition ratings. So if you look at the condition rating, if you have a roof, a siding, windows, and a kitchen, but you know, the baths and the floors and all that haven't been done, I'm going to be more inclined to put you towards the C3 rating than the C4 rating because you did a lot of the major upgrades that needed to be done. So it's more of a general value. It's not a dollar for dollar thing. You're not going to spend $30,000 on a roof and you're not getting $30,000 in value back. You know, it's generally what updates as a whole are taken together. Okay. Display, different style. I usually don't make a adjustment for different style. I just saw a question I didn't answer before.
Yeah.
I don't make an adjustment for different style. I base it on more gross living area. A lot of people have no problem living in a split versus a cape. I personally have a problem living in high ranches. I live in a high ranch. I don't like high ranches. So for me, it's a personal problem, but for most people, especially in this market, it's kind of whatever is there is what people buy. Obviously, there's going to be houses that are more suitable to people's tastes, and there's houses that are not as suitable, you know. 3 roofs, too much weight. Yep, very dangerous. If you have 10, okay. All right. So let's keep moving on here. Water heater. Oh, most water heaters do come equipped if they're newer. I mean, within the past 30, 40 years, come with the pressure relief valve. I've only ever seen one time where I didn't have the pressure relief valve, and it was an old water heater. So that's not really much of a problem anymore. Appliances, all the appliances need to be working. And well, I should say all the appliances that are going to be conveyed to the buyer need to be working. So if you have a microwave that's built in, that needs to be working, the stove, the refrigerator, etc. So we're going to check to make sure that's all working. And we're also going to check to see that all the sinks and the toilets work and the water runs and the lights and the electric works in all the rooms. So let's see. That's about it on this page. Okay, so common failure number 1. This is the one that gets everybody. Peeling paint. Most houses in Long Island were built before 1978. So if you have any peeling paint on your house, on your shed, on your deck, on any part of the property, you will have to get it scraped and repainted because of the issues of and danger of lead. You don't want anybody, you know, don't want little children eating the lead. You know, I'm more of a Darwinist, but the government says you can't, if you eat the lead paint, then you're going to get in big trouble. And I have to make sure that no one has peeling paint and has to be taken care of. So that includes, like we said, fences, garage, sheds, everything. Now, I will put an asterisk on sheds and decks. If you can prove to me that the deck or the shed was built after 1978 with a permit, I won't call for it. But most people and most realtors and most homeowners don't have those permits, and they can't show me the proof that it was built after 1978. So most of the time we just call for it. Okay, so that's peeling paint. Failure number 2, missing outlet covers and exposed wires. I don't know why people take their outlet covers off. It's just a thing. Every house has one. I know I can think in my head, there's one outlet cover in my house that's unplugged, and I don't know why. I just never got around to putting it on. So just when you go through the house, before the appraiser comes, just make sure all the outlets are covered and make sure there's no wires exposed. And then make sure in the electric panel, you don't have any dead rodents inside the electric panel. That electrified, okay? That's what you don't want. You want to make sure the panel is fully covered and all the slots are blocked. The goal of FHA is to make sure your 2, 3, or 4-year-olds can't get hurt in that house by touching something or eating something. So I like to think, my son is 4 years old. If my son opened up this electric panel, would he be able to get electrocuted? Most likely. How he would get up there, probably a chair, I don't know. It's this outlet. He can stick his fingers inside the outlet and touch the other side and get electrocuted. So I like to think if someone 2, 3, 4, 5 years old can get hurt, or if someone that's 70 years or older that can get hurt with something in the house, then most likely, if it's like an easy fix, most likely it's an FHA item. That last item in the bottom right, that's old knob and tube wiring. That's really only, it's not really found, it's not going to be found anymore. There was a couple houses left in Brooklyn that still had them. It was the original electric from back in the early 1900s. But if you work in Brooklyn or in some parts of old Queens or Manhattan, you still might run into this and you still might see it in the ceiling, but most likely it's not going to be running. But if you do, you have to get that changed right away because modern appliances can't run on that line. So common failure number 3.
Yeah.
And this is, what?
Yep, no, I was going to agree. This is one of the biggies all the time.
Yeah.
The missing handrails.
Electric panel filled with acorns. Oh, that's where the squirrels stored all his nuts. That's good. He dropped it right down the pipe that from the electric coming into the house. It's actually really common. That's why you want to make sure there's the little U, I think it's the U pipe at the top of the house to make sure squirrels can't get in and put the acorn inside. Real quick before we do this, if item's not working, can you provide deductions to offer even if it states as is? Alice, for conventional loans, yes. For FHA loans, no, because you're determining the insurance eligibility for the Federal Housing Administration. They want all their stuff completed and they want that house insurable. They don't care if it's not working. They don't care if the buyer or the seller can't afford it. And it doesn't happen. They don't care. There's no exception, nothing. Scheduled Friday. I know the stove does not work. Any suggestions? Hire a repairman, get a new stove. Hope that the appraiser doesn't check the stove. I mean, yeah, there's really not much you can do. You need a working stove in there. So, hand electric panel. Let's see it. The owner wants to fix things. If the owner doesn't want to pay for fixing things to satisfy everyone, they're extra. Yes. So Marina, it doesn't matter who pays for it and who gets it done. It just needs to be done. So yes, you can negotiate with the seller and the buyers on who does the FHA repairs. In this market, most sellers are requiring the buyers to pay for everything because they don't have to use an FHA loan at all. They can easily find enough buyers behind them with conventional loans to purchase the house. So most buyers will have to cover this in this market right now. But yes, you can negotiate that. Okay, blah, blah, blah. We'll mostly cover if they want the house. Yep, exactly. So, all right. So common failure number 3, missing handrails. So for a long, long time, and this is for my older realtors, for a long, long time, it used to be 3 steps. So if it was more than 3 steps, then it would be, you would need a handrail. However, they have now deferred to the appraiser's judgment, which means they put the liability on us now instead of us saying, oh, hey, you know, this is more than 3 steps, which is FHA requirement. So they got rid of the requirement and they said the appraiser makes that determination. So now what we use, or what you're supposed to use, is what the town uses as their code, 30 inches. If it's more than 30 inches, no matter the height of the steps, no matter how many steps, if it's 30 inches high to the top of that base where the porch is, or where the top of the landing is, then you need a handrail. In this case, I think this was like 40 inches or like 38 inches, or I don't remember what it was, but this needed a handrail. So a good rule of thumb is 3 steps or more. That's a good rule of thumb if you don't have a ruler or a measuring tape. And most appraisers, because a lot of them haven't been updated on the 3-step rule, they'll call for anything 3 steps or more, but it's 30 inches is what it is in most counties and most towns. So that is that's the requirement for handrails. And that also goes for guardrails too. So if you see on the bottom picture, you know, if you were to walk out in winter in January and someone's older, you know, an older person who doesn't have as good as balance, if they went out there and it was ice, they could fly right off the edge of the deck and land on the concrete and break something. So once again, we talk about how anything that's dangerous for someone that's 5 and under, and anything that's dangerous for anybody that's 75 and older. So that's what FHA is trying to mitigate risk on. That's their big risk mitigation strategy, is the dangers for those groups going above. So, and then number 3, this is an interior hallway of the basement. So if you were to fall down these steps, you have nothing to grab onto, no handrail, no nothing. You need a handrail on these interior steps. So any steps interior that's, you know, 3 or more steps, you're going to need some type of handrail there. So let's see, all in the stove. Just wondering, the safety requirements should be the same, whether it's FHA or conventional, isn't it? I mean, from a concerned parent and a person of care and safety, yeah, I would like to put handrails where things should be and guardrails, because I think it's just good risk mitigation practice as a homeowner. However, for a conventional loan, we don't, as an appraiser, we're not looking for it and we're not going to call for it. I mean, unless something's blatant. I mean, if there's a giant hole that's in the deck that when you walk out and you can fall into the hole of the deck, which I think you'll see right here, yeah, in the bottom right, this is other items, the bottom right. And even if it's conventional or FHA, we're going to call for that. We're going to say, hey, you got to get that deck fixed. Someone can break their ankle, you know, walking on that deck. So here's a couple other items for FHA. Top left, leaking ceilings. So there's some type of leak, whether it's a bathroom, roof, whatever. We're going to have someone call for it, and you're going to have to probably get some type of inspector, plumber, whatever, to come fix it. Down here, this is uncovered fascias and soffits. So there can be no exposed wood on the side of the buildings. So all fascias, all soffits need to be covered. There can't be any exposed wood. Bottom left is subroofing that cannot have any wet stains or water stains. If there is, they're probably going to call for some type of roof inspection or replacement of the roof or that panel or that sub panel. Whoever asked a question about the roofing, here's an example, top right, of a roof that has reached its economic life. So it is just flaking and curling, and it is in about a year or 2, you're going to start having really bad water issues coming in. Big thing that's happening now that the banks are calling for in this middle right photo is leaks and wetness in the basements. They're really starting to crack down on water coming through any type of basement walls or anything, because they're starting to find that there's been foundational collapses, or there's been flooding in basements after large rainstorms, because a lot of these foundations that are 70, 80 years old are starting to lose their sealability. So a lot of companies, what they're promoting now is people to do a full basement seal and re-shore up the foundation to make sure there's no more water getting into the basements. And obviously the bottom one was Hurricane Sandy. You don't want a tree in the middle of your house. That's not going to be able to fly. So that is FHA issues. Last 5 minutes, couple quick tips to get an appraiser on the good side. Number 1, don't exaggerate. What this means is sometimes when we call you on before we go to the inspection, we'll call you and we'll ask a couple questions like, hey, you know, what was the kitchen last update? You know, what's the quality? How many this, how many that? If you tell us wrong information, a lot of times we pre-comp and pre-look at the sales before we go out there. And if you tell us wrong information or you exaggerate the information, you say, hey, yeah, the whole place has got renovated. And then we get there and it's like, yeah, that was got renovated 20 years ago. We don't like doing the same work twice. And it really is annoying. And then we get there, we're like, oh, great. Now I have to, all those comps are garbage and I have to do it again. Number 2, like Deb said, ask us if we want comps. Some appraisers want them, some appraisers are adamantly against it. I'm of the camp that I actually enjoy getting comps from realtors. So number 3, again, we were talking before, is don't give us non-comparables. We want things that are similar, close in condition, size, and all of that, because we don't want just random comps to inflate the value. Number 4, and I'm not jaded, but a lot of appraisers are jaded, like we talked about before, in terms of the history of the industry. You know, we're doing a lot more work. The average appraisal went from 2 pages in 1995, 2 or 3 pages in 1995, to now I think the average appraisal is 31 or 30 pages in 2020. So we're doing, you know, triple the work. We're getting 1/3 the pay, and we just want to be treated, you know, we just want to be treated well. We'll treat you well. If we'll have a nice, you know, we'll have a nice relationship. You know, obviously the value is going to be the value. You can talk, if you get me, you can talk to me and you can say, hey, you know, I think maybe you picked the wrong comp here. Can you do this one? I'll always take a look. I have no ego when it comes to things like this. It's whatever it is. It's what the market says. And then number 5, this one I like to really stress, is don't make it awkward, meaning the laws governing appraisers, we cannot talk about value or the results of the appraisal with anyone except the client. The client is the bank, okay? We need permission from the bank to talk with anyone, including realtors, about the value, about the results of the appraisal. So, you know, by you asking us, say, hey, you know, you think this is going to come in, it puts us in a really bad spot. It's kind of like, not that like we're as worried about like the state like watching us and like testing us and whatnot, but what we saw happen to the realtors, a lot of people are becoming a lot more guarded on talking about what the values are and whatnot. It just puts us in a bad spot. Just try not to do it. Just say, hey, you know, these good comps, and then, you know, if you say yeah, then you know you're pretty good. So that's it. So if you want, that's the end of the presentation. If you guys need an appraisal for any divorce, estate, bankruptcies, Medicaid, nothing with the banks because you can't order bank appraisals directly, but anything other than bank appraisals or market, or you're having tough time listing or figuring out a listing price for a house that's in a high-end neighborhood, you know, we can definitely help you there. And you can take a screenshot of this and just let us know that you saw this at our presentation. I'll give you $75 off of your next appraisal. So that is it. And I will take any questions for the last, what do you got? 10 minutes, 7 minutes?
Hello.
Hold on, Asia, honey, hold
Yeah.
on 1 second. Let me just
Sure.
take care of the questions that are in the box, okay?
Bert asked any word on USTS.
USTS, US Treasuries?
I don't know. That's what it says.
What is it?
Bert, you can unmute if you want to clarify.
Well, and then
Bert,
Carol,
are you there, Bert?
maybe not.
Okay.
We'll
Carol
figure out
asked what banks you work with. I don't think that Carol asked what banks you work with. I don't.
Yeah, I
know.
mean, I work with all major national lenders, you know, Chase, small banks like Bethpage Credit Union, small hard money lenders. I work the full gamut. You know, you pick it, I probably work for them. Oh, I also been delving into more foreign banks now too, because they're starting to really bring in a lot of more foreign money again into the high end areas, parking money in these properties. So it's
Right.
very interesting. to say the
And
least.
Annette asked, does it look good? I think that's putting someone on the spot myself. I think.
Does it look good? Yeah, it's putting someone on the spot. I try to stay away from anything that's value related. It's either you know or you know if it's going to come in or not. If you have a problem, then you know try to show the comps that support that. You know, if there's really a case, make the case. You know, say, hey, look, I have these 3 comps. You know, our house is superior to this one, this one, this one. These are the values of this one, this one, this one, and that's why you know these are superior. That's fine. But like to say, hey, you know, you're going to come in at 600,000. And it's like, I can't really say that. It's now weird. So is it necessary to see a survey? No, not necessary to see a survey. However, it is helpful, especially for irregular typed properties. So you'll see this a lot more in Huntington, out east, the Hamptons, or like really old properties that haven't been subdivided properly. Anywhere, oh, word on underground storage tanks. Sorry, my brain's an economic one, so I thought US Treasuries. Anywhere on underground storage tanks. Yes, they changed that. They changed it so if it's a gas station, it's no longer a factor, and it's up to the bank to determine if they want to lend on it or not. But most banks are not lending if the house. All right, let me back up. So there was a big thing that FHA came out with like 2 or 3 years ago, where they said if you're within 200 feet of a gas station, or I should say an underground storage tank, which usually implies a gas station or some type of like mechanic station that has, you know, underground fuel. The bank, the FHA would not insure on it. They got a lot of pushback because they changed the rule from like 300 feet to 200 feet or something like that, and it knocked out a lot of properties that were close to that. So there's a lot of pushback from the banks, and they basically fought it, and FHA dropped the rule. And now I think gas stations are now like excluded or something like that. I'm retaking my FHA course here in the next 3 months. So I'll give you guys another updated information when I redo the class in a couple months. So thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, the next question comes up. Jacqueline wants to know if you do appraise co-ops in Manhattan.
Yes, I do. I love doing appraisals in Manhattan. It's one of my favorite places. So I prefer Manhattan and I prefer the Hamptons. That's in my two places I like working. I have a question about water spots in the basement floor. Will discourage a bank from lending. Water spots? No. Active water? Yes. Okay. What is the safety requirement of different for FHA to conventional loans? What are the safety requirements? Okay, so FHA, sorry, my wife just came in and gave me water. So safety requirements for FHA are the ones we talked about. Conventional loans is more like blatantly dangerous situations. Meaning, you have a shed that's collapsing in, that we're going to call for. You have a large water leak coming from the hot water heater. We're going to call for that. We smell oil throughout the whole basement. We're probably going to call for that. So anything that's really blatant and major, you know, if you do a walkthrough of the house before the appraiser gets there and you don't notice anything blatant or major, then most likely it's not an issue for conventional purposes. We're not going to bring it up. Okay, what are your fees for an appraisal, Nora? It all depends on the type of appraisal and the complexity of the property. If you have a specific address or anything, you can definitely email us at the email I provided here, and we'll get you a quote out. What about underground oil tank? Underground oil tank. It's not. I think it's 1,000 gallon, under 1,000 gallons, that we won't call for a removal, but we do have to mention it. And I know some banks won't lend on it, but it's very rare over here because there's so many houses that do have underground oil tanks. Okay, 10 years, 133, 30 rate mortgage around 293.
Okay.
I know I got a 2.9 mortgage on mine. It was very nice.
I just want to go back to Asia, because there's no more questions in here.
Okay.
Asia, you had a question, honey?
Hi, quickly, is it best to provide for the realtor, for the comps before you coming to the house to appraise it, or so you can kind of also consider the comps rather than when you come and you're already there?
Yeah, you can email. I've had realtors email it beforehand. I've had realtors give it to me at the appraisal, but I've emailed. realtors give it to me after the appraisal. I don't,
Mhm.
I think the most.
It doesn't
effective-
matter. Okay.
I think the most effective, if you're having an issue with the house, or like you want the appraiser to really focus on a certain feature, like the
Mhm.
in-ground pool or a pool house, or
Some
something,
updates.
yeah,
Mhm.
whatever it is, you really want to focus. You probably want to do it in person. That's
And also, is it okay if, I mean, I never asked, but is it okay if I'll ask Appraisal to provide his comps to email it to me prior you coming, or this is like a no-no?
No.
You don't do that?
nah.
No? Okay,
That's a no-no. That's no, big no-no.
Okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
We wouldn't even engage in that question.
Yeah.
We would,
Got it. Okay.
did you see my response? That's probably what most would do.
Thank you.
Scott, before we finish, there are no more questions. And before we say goodbye, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
And that's so that you can see everybody. You could see everybody, and it's great that I like everybody to personally give. Everybody's putting it in the chat box, but it's always nice to
Oh, actually, I have the double screen. I can see both. So I've been watching everybody the whole time.
oh, cool. All right.
Yes,
All right. Well, at this time, then, guys, if you would like to unmute yourself and thank Scott, and I thank you so much, Scott. Always great. So much information. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with everybody today. And now, everybody, if you want to say thank you, come here.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was amazing presentation.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
No
Thanks again.
problem.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you very much.
You can always reach out if you need anything. You have any questions,
All
all
right.
right?
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Awesome. Really great.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Scott.
Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep safe.
Good one.
Bye.
Thanks, Deb.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Bye, guys.